FM and now 102.3 FM.
Do you have a debt problem? Are you being sued for an unpaid debt? Is your paycheck being garnished or your bank account emptied out? Do you feel like you're running out of options? The Fullman Firm is your friendly local law firm next door and has helped thousands of people just like you. Give us a call at 833-FULLMAN and see if we can help you too. It's a free confidential consultation. You have nothing to lose. For debts above $7,000, give us a call at 833-FULLMAN or check out FullmanFirm.com. That's 833-FULLMAN. The Fullman Firm. Let our lawyers get you on the path to financial freedom. The proceeding is not intended as a guarantee or estimate of the outcome of your case. Every case is unique and past results are not indicators of the success of your case. Take control of your financial future and call 833-FULLMAN or visit FullmanFirm.com now.
California headline news. 2 passengers who were on board the Grand Princess cruise ship have now died. Alex Stone reports they were first housed at Travis Air Force Base.
They were sent to hospitals after developing symptoms of COVID-19. The Department of Health and Human Services says one man passed away on March 21st and the other on the 23rd.
The Alameda County Sheriff's Department is reporting a contract nurse assigned to the Santa Rita jail has now contracted COVID-19. This is the first suspected case of coronavirus in the jail. And Los Angeles County Public Health Director Dr. Barbara Ferrer warns of what could happen moving forward.
If there are 1,000 people that are positive and each one of those people infects 2 other people, if we don't curtail that spread, within a few weeks, there could be over 1 million people that would be infected in L.A. County.
L.A. County today reported it now has over 1,200 coronavirus cases. An additional 9 people have died from COVID-19. Steve Clausen, California News.
When you're diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer,
1 million questions flood your mind.
How can this be happening?
Am I going to be able to work?
What's a subtype?
What do I do now?
We know.
We went through it too.
But once you start to understand your options,
You can partner with your doctor
and find ways to face MBC on your own terms.
visit findyourmbcvoice.com and learn how to speak up and have a more informed conversation with your doctor.
Some questions have answers.
Visit findyourmbcvoice.com to find some of yours.
It's happening. Wherever cupcakes are being frosted, songs are being recorded, and engines are being tuned, ADP is designing a better way to work. With industry-leading HR, talent, time, benefits, and payroll, more companies rely on ADP than any other HR partner, from small business to global enterprise. See how ADP can help you and your people achieve what you're working for at design.adp.com. ADP, always designing for people.
This is an NBC News Radio special report. The coronavirus. The U.S. is now home to the most coronavirus cases in the world. There are over 82,000 in the country, more than Italy and China. In the U.S., over 1,100 people have died. President Trump is urging the House to pass the massive coronavirus stimulus package. The Senate passed the more than $2 trillion measure last night with no senator voting against it. Trump talked about how the Senate came together to pass the measure.
96-0. And I have to say it's the largest by far, and I'm profoundly grateful that both parties came together to provide relief for American workers and families in this hour of need.
More cases of coronavirus are emerging in the military. Acting Navy Secretary Thomas Modly confirmed additional cases on board the Theodore Roosevelt Naval Aircraft Carrier. This has been an NBC News Radio special report. I'm Brian Shook.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-298-8662. That's 800-298-8662. 800-298-8662.
KCAA.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You're tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere in the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reid. By the way, you can follow this show on Instagram and Facebook. Just go to Viewpoint with Father John, and you can contact me through there. You can message me. It's kind of neat. I get messages from a lot of you, and I enjoy the communication that we have. And I appreciate the fact that you take the time to send me some of your ideas and some of the things going on with your life. We're in this thing together. So continue to do that. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing of false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And brothers and sisters, as we go through this time right now, I want to tell you that there's a great pharmacy in Claremont. Of course, it's called Claremont Pharmacy, owned by Dr. Nikki Ho. It's on the corner of Indian Hill Boulevard and Arrow Highway. If you want a good pharmacist that gives old-fashioned service, that knows you by name, this is the place to go. Whether Michelle is waiting on you, Dr. Nikki Ho, or Dr. Nikki's husband, Martin, is waiting on you, you'll know that you're in good hands because they take every prescription serious. You're not just a number to them. You know, with a lot of the national chains, I mean, they have their place, but you know what? I like going in a place where I have a personal relationship with the people there, and I know that they're getting my prescriptions done right. And you'll get that at Claremont Pharmacy. Tonight we have a lot going on, and I changed tonight's program because with what we're walking through as a nation, I thought we needed to deal with some spiritual principles to help us get through this pandemic. A lot of people are frightened right now, and I certainly understand that. I'm not going to tell you don't be afraid. There are appropriate times to have fear. We have an appropriate fear to not put our hands in fire. That's a very healthy fear. We have a proper fear to not play with rattlesnakes. That's a proper fear. And taking care of ourselves during the coronavirus is a good fear. And not everyone seems to be taking this serious, and I'm going to tell you why I say that. Yesterday I was in Costa Mesa, California. I was presiding over a graveside service. Yes, they still are allowing some graveside funerals with only a gathering of 10 people. I'm serious about that, no more than 10 people. But here's what got me. As I'm driving through the city of Costa Mesa, I saw groups of people on the street. Folks, this isn't a game. This pandemic is serious. And while you may not suffer from this, you may cause someone else to suffer from it because you can be a carrier of this disease without getting sick. This is our current plague. This is like the bubonic plague. The difference is back then we took it really serious, and right now we're having trouble getting people to take this serious. They're more worried about being inconvenienced. And that's going to cause a lot of problems down the road. You know, a few weeks of inconvenience is worth a lifetime of being healthy. I am confident that at some point we will have a vaccine, we will have a treatment plan, but in the meantime, we need to come together and work together on this and be each other's keeper on this, that we are not running around doing things that we don't need to be doing. Now, I'm not saying don't exercise. I do my walk every day. Now, I'm careful when I do my walk. I don't go into groups of people. If I see someone else on the sidewalk, I make sure that when we pass each other, there's at least 6 feet between us, because I owe that to my fellow citizens to be a good steward of the sidewalks here when I'm using them. And then I go back home, and I don't come out unless I really need to. Now, I am considered an essential worker because of the fact that, as a priest, I have to go out and meet with families dealing with death. I still have to give what we used to call last rites. I call it the anointing of the sick. It's still part of my duties. But if I'm not out doing one of those things or shopping for groceries, I try to stay in. That's my being responsible. And so we need to come together and be responsible as a society. Right now we have over 82,000 people infected that we know of. And the reason I say that we know of is because testing isn't being done everywhere or in every case. I have a friend who just told me on Facebook that yesterday they went to LA County at USC with all the symptoms of coronavirus. And they're pretty sure they probably have it, but they couldn't get tested. The ER doctor said, look, we just don't have enough tests to test people. The only way we can give you a test is if you're admitted to the hospital. So they sent my friend home who has COPD, which means they're of high risk of dying from this thing, with oxygen for them to use the oxygenator at home. And if they get worse, then consider coming back if they make it. So 82,000 is what we know of. I'm telling you, the numbers are much higher, and we've already had over 1,000 people die. Before I went on air, I believe the count was up to 1,060. It might even be higher than that now, because it's going all the time. I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm telling you that because knowledge is powerful, and we have to know what it is we're dealing with. This is serious stuff. Not to have anyone to blame. This isn't about going around blaming people, and it breaks my heart that there have been over 650 incidents of people who are of Asian culture who have been abused now since the coronavirus. They didn't cause this, and it's not okay to abuse people. I had hoped that we had gotten past this in this day and age, and I can see we haven't. And maybe this is a time for us to do some real growing up as a society to see that we need to start looking at people differently. We all have the same Creator, so we all deserve to be treated with the same dignity. And if we can't do that, well, we can't claim to be practicing spiritual principles. I don't care what religion you identify with. If you're being hateful to other people, you're going against the very tenets of almost every single religion out there. So I'd just like for you to think about that. And if we do come together, we stand a good chance of getting through this. I have a lot of people, my phone rings every day with people who are just terrified. I've done more crisis work in the last couple of weeks than I probably have in the last 5 years. And I don't mind. It's what I do. It's a privilege as a priest to get to be there for people. So I'm not complaining about it. I'm just putting that out there to let you know a lot of people are struggling with this, and we need to be a little more patient with each other. I felt like I struck gold today because at Stater Brothers I found paper towels. And I was so excited as I'm putting them into my basket. Another guy's going by my basket, and I said, look, I struck gold. And he says, that's good, but I still can't find toilet paper. So I told him where I found a store with toilet paper yesterday. And then someone else told us of another place to get other supplies. So one good thing's happening with this. People who don't even know each other were helping each other find things because we're realizing we all have these needs. And in seeing each other's needs, we're passing on information to help get those needs met, which means that people who normally would not talk are starting to talk. Where am I going with this? There's no such thing as a problem that doesn't also bear a gift. And always make sure you bear the gift before you decide to dispose of the problem. Now, sure, we need to do something with this coronavirus, but let's see the gifts that it has to offer to us. And that's why tonight I want to talk about using spiritual principles to get through this pandemic. Because this is a great time for us to practice spiritual principles. I put out a video earlier that went on LinkedIn and Instagram. And on there, I mentioned that it's easy to feel spiritual when everything's going really well. It really is to feel spiritual during those times. But what do we do when the wheels are falling off? When we have a crisis like this? Do we throw the spiritual principles out the window and say, well, it just doesn't work because life's not going my way? Or do we really dig in and practice these principles in our lives? You know, and this is a great time for us to practice these principles. What are the principles I'm talking about? The principles of love, the principles of compassion, the principles of being concerned for our neighbors. You know, last week when I was coming up to the studio, Dr. Smith was with me, and before we got to the door, there was a homeless person outside the studio, and there was two people there that had care packages that they were giving that person that had food and other things in it. That's what I'm talking about. Now, I don't know what church they belong to, but I could tell you they certainly were the hands of Jesus that night. And that person who received those packages, and believe me, it was cold out, so I was glad they had a blanket, got to get the sense that somebody cares. And I think the worst part of walking through any of this is to feel like you're walking through it alone, that nobody cares, that nobody could even worry about you. Well, these people showed that even though they didn't know that person personally, that person mattered. What I saw was Jesus working last week. I saw the spiritual principle of Christianity. I don't know what name they were using for it, but it's the Christianity I know, where you look out for the poor, where you look out for the ones who are hungry, the ones who are sick, the ones who are imprisoned. It's easy to judge. Mother Teresa says when you judge people, you don't have time to love them. So I'm asking you to do something beyond judging. I'm asking you to go into something we call loving, which means we have to get out of self. Now, you've probably heard me say this thousands of times on this program, and it's just as true tonight as it is every time I say it, that love is a divine paradox. When you go out to get, you come back empty. When you go out to give, you come back overflowing. And this is our time to go out and give. Now, I'm not talking about physically going out and spreading the disease. I'm talking about checking on people. How many people do you know who are sheltered in, who might be alone, who could use a phone call? Someone who could just know that somebody cares. Somebody who could use a little pick-me-up by someone leaving some groceries on their front door and no note saying who did it. You know, I always share this during Christmas time, but this is a good time to share it again. When I was around 5 years old, maybe not even that old, I didn't realize how important it was to sleep in the morning, so I got up very early those days. Now I know better now. And it's about Christmas time. And I grew up very poor. We had nothing, literally had nothing. And someone had evidently contacted the Salvation Army and told them that we were a family that had nothing for Christmas. So very early in the morning, it had to be before 5 a.m., I was in the kitchen, and the way our house was set up was there's a window from the kitchen that was by the front porch. And I heard a little bit of movement on the front porch. I didn't know what it was, so I snuck a peek through the kitchen curtains. And there was a guy there in a Salvation Army uniform, trying to be as quiet as he could, putting a box full of toys and food on our porch. Now, there was nothing on the box that said Salvation Army. There was no note. There was no advertisement. They didn't want us to know where it came from. And the guy very quietly went back to his car and very quietly closed his door and drove off. And he didn't want to wake anybody. He just wanted us to know that somebody cared. Didn't want us to know exactly who it was, but that somebody cared. And they left us toys and food, most of all, they left us goodwill. I share that with you tonight because that's an important spiritual message. So you didn't have to tell me that that was a Christian organization. Everything they did said it. They didn't have to advertise it. And they gave hope to a little child. And I know it gave hope to my mom. We were a single parent household. And the fact that she now had food for her children and even some toys, well, sometimes it's what seems like small to some people is monumental to others. So that gives you a little direction of where we're going to go tonight. We're going to talk about spiritual principles during these difficult times. I like to propose that crisis time is awakening time. And so we're going to go to our first commercial break, and when we come back, we'll start talking about how crisis time is awakening time. You're listening to Viewpoint with Father John.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292FQ Riverside, and K293CF Moreno Valley. It's time to shop in the cool, relaxed comfort of the Tri-City Shopping Center in Redlands, conveniently located on the I-10 freeway between the Alabama and Tennessee exits. Bring the kids too and watch them play in the only indoor fun center, High Five Indoor Playground, where parents are welcomed on the playground. Birthday celebrations are encouraged, so make plans for some great fun at the mall. More reasons why the Tri-City Center is called the Mall with a Heart.
And welcome back. You're tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reid. And tonight we're talking about spiritual principles during these difficult times. And as I said before the break, crisis time is awakening time. I used to hear that from my friend Dr. Luis Diagloa. I always wish I had a name like that. You know, Father John Reid, that doesn't sound like much, but Dr. Luis Diagloa. Now that makes you want to listen to what they have to say, doesn't it? So being that I have a plain name, you just have to read the book. So how was that, Frank, for a nice sales point for the book, huh? That's nice, huh? So anyhow, we're talking about oath, and he even put it on the screen. Thank you, Frank. Crisis time is awakening time because you have to find new answers for old situations. Let me tell you where I'm going with this. We always have some type of health crisis. It's just human nature. We had N1H1, we had Ebola, and so there's always something there. Now this one's more serious than those other ones were. We weren't ready for this. However, there's been stuff happening for a long time where as a society we've been marginalizing people. We've been saying that some people matter, some people don't. We're quick to judge the homeless. We're quick to say those who have addictions are just losers. This is causing us to come together because this disease doesn't care if you have an addiction. It doesn't care if you have a place to live or if you're homeless. It doesn't care if you're black, white, yellow, orange. It doesn't care about any of that. It doesn't care what zip code you live in, what your religion is. It's an equal opportunity destroyer. And it doesn't care if you're young or if you're old. Now, at first, they didn't think that the young could really be affected by this. Now we're finding out that that's not true. We're having young people die from this. And those that aren't dying are winding up with really scarred lungs. They'll be scarred the rest of their lives with this thing. They'll always have a difficulty breathing. So, we have something in common now with everybody else in this world. So this is a time for us to find new ways of doing things, to care at a new level. When I say practicing spiritual principles, what am I talking about? I'm talking about practicing love. I'm talking about seeing our Creator God, whatever name you know God by, in the eyes of our fellow. And when I say fellow, I mean both men and women. Those are deep spiritual principles. Spiritual principles of how we treat people, how we are honest, and go to God with everything that we have. You ever notice how we try to dress things up before we go to God, like we could hide things from God? I always think of the line in Genesis, "Who told you were naked?" As Adam and Eve are hiding in the garden. How do you hide from God? Our ego says we can. Our ego says we can. And true spirituality is when we realize we can go to God with all of it. And God loves us through all of it. God's love is not conditional. Our love is, but that's not God's love. And this gives us an opportunity to love the way that God loves, unconditionally. Is that tough? You better believe it. But if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But those who claim to be spiritual people, where you say you're religious or just spiritual, whatever term you prefer, this tells us more about your spirituality than anything. If you're willing to help somebody else, if you're able to look and see God in somebody else. See, the way we see anything is the way we see everything. If I look at everybody like I'm a little bit smarter than they are, well, then that's how I'm going to treat people. Like they're not making the cut. I think one of the reasons I'm very fortunate that I had no business being in the priesthood, because I was a street rat, I really was, I'm not just saying that, is because I knew I had no room to look down my nose at anybody. That my serving in the priesthood is a true sign of grace, not deserving. It wasn't merit that I was called in by, but because God is gracious. And so I need to remember that when I'm looking at other people and say, I needed this much of God's grace. I wonder how much grace they need too, along with the grace I need. And then look to see God in them. So it's really a great thing to do. And some of the ways we can do this, I know some people really get nervous when I start talking about prayer and meditation, but I'm going to talk about that because that's part of spiritual principles. Because how can you pass along something you're not connected to? Prayer and meditation is getting connected to the source itself. St. Paul says to pray without ceasing. And that sounds like a tall order, doesn't it? Well, we're always talking to God. Everything is... No, that's not what it means. It means we see God in everything. We include God in everything. Yeah, part of it's praying. Well, we're saying a petition to God. But other parts of it is when we're listening to God. That's meditation. When we see God in the eyes of our fellow human beings. When we see God in nature. And I know that Plato thought that nature and God were opposed to each other, but they're not. Nature comes from God. Nature is the beauty of God. And when we can recognize that, that's powerful. See, that's what a mystic is. A mystic is someone who sees God everywhere they look. And not just intellectually. I mean, they see from their heart. And they commune with God everywhere they look. And if you want to become mystical, which some people in the modern Christian church have some fear with that word just because they don't know what it means, that's all. It means someone who has the actual experience with God, which we all could have. God's willing for us to have that, then we can become a mystic as well. And there's some great mystics that have been through the centuries, some Jewish, some Sufi. Rumi, was a mystic. He's a Sufi. Meister Eckhart, one of our Christian mystics. Another one we had was Thomas Merton. He was a common day one. I've known a couple people who I consider to be mystics. And what they do is everywhere they look, they see God. And when you're around them, your vision seems to be raised a little bit as well. And you start noticing God in different places. And that's the beauty about being around them. I've had a few that have been part of my life. I've had a couple that were spiritual directors for me. And they helped me see what I was blind to. And I didn't realize how much beauty I was missing out on. What does that have to do with our current situation? It has everything to do with our current situation. When all we can do is see the problem, just see the disease, and it's important to recognize it, and we don't see hope, we're in trouble. We need to see hope. It's in our DNA that we have to have hope. And hope isn't something we can think our way into. It's something we have to be infected with. So when we listen to people who give us hope, they infect us with their hope. Now, that's how I found hope. When I was first learning about spiritual principles, I didn't have anything going on in life. I was a loser at life. I mean that sincerely. That's not hyperbole. I really had nothing going for me. And some people very lovingly shared some spiritual principles with me. The principles of being honest with oneself, of being able to admit when they were wrong about something, to look at where they got in their own way instead of blaming other people, and then to see what they could do to help other people make these discoveries too. And in them doing that, I got infected with their hope. I wanted what they had. There was something in their eyes, something beautiful that you couldn't have driven me away from with a bulldozer, because I knew they knew something. Not from what they said, but from what they did. True spirituality always translates through our behavior. Because, St. Paul, when he talks about, if I talk of things of God and of nature, and I'm not with love, and I'm paraphrasing here, I'm just a clanging cymbal, a sounding gong, I am nothing. So it's not so much what we say, it's what we do. And so what we need to do is first get honest. Let's look at our fear. What is it we're afraid of? And again, I'm not here to tell you don't be afraid. Hey, if you don't have some fear about this coronavirus, there's something wrong. Okay, you're out of touch with reality. Like I said, I have a healthy fear of putting my hand in fire. It's not that I'm afraid of fire, but I sure have a healthy fear that I'm not going to stick my hand in there, because I know it's not a natural thing to do. Just like it's not natural for me to go out and be socializing during this coronavirus, knowing how easily it's spread. And particularly in my case, I have some of those things that they don't want people like me getting the coronavirus, because I do have asthma, I do have diabetes, and I have some other issues as well. And so I'm a prime candidate to wind up in the ICU, and so I have to do my part. So part of the spirituality, using spiritual principles, is being honest with where I am, not trying to be someplace other than where I am. Not pretending I don't have certain vulnerabilities that I have. It's spiritual to say, hey, here's some precautions I need to take. God was kind enough to give me a brain so I could realize that. God's been kind enough to give you a brain so you can realize that. So that's part of the spiritual principle. Being aware of the signs that God is showing us. Okay? Then once I do that, I look at what this fear is, and I see what's a healthy fear and what's not a healthy fear. What's not a healthy fear is to have it turn into anger and be angry with the entire world and try to blame one place or another because this has happened. Look, the Chinese didn't do this to us. They were victimized too. They didn't say, you know what, we're going to come up with this thing and we're going to send it over to America. Think about that for a moment, kids. They were victims too. Children lost their mothers and fathers. They lost their grandfather and grandmother. They lost their children. And we want to be mad at them like they did this to us? No, they were doing everything they could do to try to get their hands around this and get their best scientists working on it. What about Italy? Do we want to blame Italy? No. They've gone through it. They're doing everything they can do. And guess what? We now have the biggest population. We're the new epicenter of this disease. So do we want to go around blaming other people or saying, well, maybe New York should have been better prepared, or maybe New Orleans should have been better prepared, or Florida? Or can we look with eyes of compassion and say, you know, they're losing people too. They don't have what they need either to fight this disease adequately. There's the difference. When we can see ourselves and the other people, and we can relate to their needs, their fears, their pain, and actually care and want to do something about it, that's using spiritual principles in this situation. It's not running around blaming people. And I know some people want to get political with this. This is not the time. You know, we can look back on it later and see what was done right and what wasn't done right. But this isn't the time to do that. This isn't the time for political shots, one side or the other. This is time to come together and to work together. Kids, we're all Americans. We're all Americans. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, or have no affiliation. We are all members of this country, and we need to come together. We have that in common. We should be supporting each other, not trying to knock each other down. So save the political stuff for later. You can have at it all you want once we're through this, and I'll let you do all that. Believe me, Facebook will be on fire with it. I have no doubt about it. So Reid doing it for part of it, and I'm sorry to see that. People are so busy doing that they're not doing the things we should be doing. So what caring steps are we going to take? Who do you know that needs to be reached out to? I was telling Frank during the commercial that the first commercial with personal funeral care, personal funeral planning, Jesse Ruiz, who owns that, I was telling him that yesterday Jesse reached out to me, called me to see if I have everything I need. See, that's what I'm talking about. Now I'm doing okay. I have what I need. And of course, like I said earlier, I scored paper towels today, so I'm on top of the world at the moment. I have some brawny. I feel tough. And, but the fact that he cared enough to pick up the phone to see if someone he cares about might need something. I had someone else call me a couple days ago and say, hey, I'm going to the store. Do you need anything I can pick up for you and I can leave it at your front porch? Wow. That's pretty cool, isn't it? And it wasn't just one or two people. I've had a number of people. I have a group that I hang out with, and I'm the youngest part of that group. There's one guy younger than me, but everyone else is over 60, a couple of them in their 80s. And we have the guy who's younger than me who's been going around asking if anybody needs grocery shopping done for them so that we don't have to go out and expose ourselves at our upper ages, okay? That's spiritual principles being used right there. And he's not looking to do this to be thanked. He's doing it because he cares about some other people, and he's willing to put himself out to see that other people have what they need to get their needs met. That's using spiritual principles during this time. And if you are in the range of the age, or you have health things that are dangerous, what are some things that those of us who are in that area can do as well? We can stay off the street as much as possible so the emergency responders don't have to come unnecessarily to save us because we were insisting on going out and doing things that could wait for a little while, could wait a couple weeks. Okay? Part of our spiritual practice is thinking of the welfare of the first responders. You know, a lot of them in New York are out. Over 3,000 are out on the police department right now. That's 10% of their force are out sick, many of them with the coronavirus. So keep that in mind and pray. Let's pray for one another. And people are of different religions. Well, it's all one God, just different expressions of one God. So let's pray for each other. And whatever your religious persuasion is, talk to God the way you understand God. Pray for me. And I'll talk to God the way I understand God, which that's always changing. And I'll pray for you. Those are spiritual principles. And we're going to go to the next break, but when we come back, I want to talk about some things we can do to keep us in our correct mind and work spiritual principles. You're listening to Viewpoint with Father John. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Yard House Restaurant of Temecula takes this special time to salute the Temecula men and women in uniform who've answered the call for our freedoms. Let's give them the hero's welcome they deserve as they have fought hard to restore peace around the world. American troops are our angels of protection, so stand up and salute them proudly. That's from Yard House Restaurant in Temecula, where they say service isn't just a courtesy, it's a commitment. Call 951-296-3116 for Yard House Restaurant of Temecula at 40770 Winchester Road in Temecula.
And welcome back. You're tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere in the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reid. And a quick shout out to the best sound man in the business. Hey, how you doing there, Frank? Hi, I caught him on flat-footed.
I'm doing pretty good. How are you, Father John?
Good. I should say I caught you injure-footed.
Don't kick rocks, kids.
Yeah, you know what? He usually sends me kicking rocks, but he was out in the desert and he kicked a rock. Well, I hope you heal quickly, and thanks for being here tonight in spite of your infirmity.
Thank you, Father John.
See, it's always funny when it happens to someone else's foot. So I said before the commercial break that I'd give you some how-dos, some things to do to help during this. So I want to give you a writing assignment. And here's a couple of things that I want you to do to help. And some of you won't be surprised because, you know, this is something I practice myself. Every day, write a gratitude list. Has to be at least 3 things. Could go as long as you want, but no less than 3 items, and you can't repeat the same 3 items 2 days in a row. Why am I having you do that? Well, science has discovered that when something negative happens, and that's happening right now, it's like Velcro. It sticks to our brain. It is there. It is implanted. However, when something good happens, if we don't concentrate on it for at least 15 seconds, it leaves without us even realizing that we had the experience. So when we write a gratitude list daily, we are actually rewiring the brain. And we're causing good things to stick. We're causing new grooves. And you can actually see it when examining the brains, new grooves in the brain where we're rerouting for positive experiences. And you'll start noticing more positive things in your life after you've been doing this for a little while. It'll only take a couple weeks of doing this, somewhere between 10 and 21 days, they're saying, if you do this. Now, I do this every night before I go to bed. I write at least 3 things I'm grateful for, and they have to be 3 new things every day. Now, there's some days I'll write 7, 8, all the way up to 20 things. I'll sometimes take up a couple of pages of things I'm grateful for. Some days I have to struggle to find the 3. But in finding those 3, it makes a big difference. It gives me a different outlook. Now I'm going to give you another writing assignment. And this one, you're just going to have to trust me on. But if you do it, you'll find it is really powerful. Who has been in your life that has made a big difference that is gone now? I want you to write them a letter. You're not going to mail a letter off. You probably don't know where they are. Or if they've died, you can't mail a letter. But you can make a God box. And a God box could be made out of anything. Now, I used a shoe box for a long time, and then somebody got tired of me being a slumlord with my God box. They made me an actual beautiful God box, which is on my desk. I look at it every day. And I put my letters in there. I leave them there for at least 2 weeks, and then I take them out and I burn them. Now, the reason I write them and put them in the God box is because I truly believe we live in a spiritual universe. And these people I'm writing to know what I have written. Otherwise, I wouldn't write it in the first place. And it helps me to continue to feel connected to them. In my uncle's case, I write slowly because he never could read fast. So I can almost hear him right now rolling his eyes up there in heaven. So I'm saying, oh, that jokes haven't gotten any better. But he was a big influence on me. He was the one who saw me through seminary. He was the one who believed in me when a lot of people didn't. And when he died, it was a huge loss in my life. And so from time to time, I sit down and I write my Uncle Bob a letter. And I just tell him how much I miss him. I tell him what's going on in my life. I tell him how much I appreciate the things he did for me that helped me to get where I am today. I'm not a self-made man. Maybe you are a self-made person. I don't know. I've not met anyone yet who truly was. There's always been somebody. We've always stood higher on someone else's shoulders to get to where we are. And it's a great spiritual practice to do this letter writing. Let them know. Now I'm going to have you write a 3rd letter. And this one will probably be the most difficult letter you have written. Get ready for it. I want you to write a letter to God and say everything you're feeling, the good and the bad. Don't hide any of it. See, sometimes our big difficulty with God is we're afraid to express our anger with God. You know, when I was 18, I lost a child. And it was very painful. It's a little baby. It's lost through miscarriage. And it took 1.5 years before I could talk to God again, which is tough when you're going to seminary and you can't talk to God, isn't it? And one day I had to write that letter and tell God how I felt about it. And an amazing thing happened when lightning didn't strike me. We have such a low opinion of God. I found that it was safe. I can tell God anything. And I needed to have that conversation with God. I needed to talk to God about my brokenness so that God could heal my brokenness. See, there's only 2 things that break our hearts open enough for God to get in. One is great love and the other is great pain. And through our great woundedness, we finally have our heart broken open enough that God could get in. And so part of that process is writing that letter and putting everything in it that we need to say to God. You can trust me on this. Now, if you're worried that God's going to get mad at you, say, Father John told me to do it. I'll take the blame, okay? Because what I learned in that practice was that God was a lot more loving than I am. And God cares a lot more than I care, and I care a great deal. And if I'm this loving, how much more loving is God? because I'm only made in his image. God's the real deal. But you can't experience that if you try and pretend you don't have anger that you've been carrying around for years and years and years. That's where you see people who claim to be very religious and very spiritual be really mean-spirited. They don't even realize they're doing it. See, I went through it again in priesthood, and I didn't even know it. I went through a really tough thing, through something that really wasn't fair. I had a spiritual director who used to say, if you want fair, it's in Pomona once a year. Other than that, life isn't fair. Life is life. It just is. Things happen. And I don't believe that God, seeks me out so he could put nails under my tire. That's not the God I understand today. Maybe your God does. Mine doesn't. But I had gone through some stuff that was very painful. And I thought I dealt with it well, but I never dealt with the anger of it. It was a real misjustice I walked through. And a member of my parish brought a friend to Sunday morning Mass, Divine Liturgy, we call it in the Orthodox. And he asked his friend what he thought after the Mass. He said, I am never going back. That priest has a mean streak. And my parishioner was shocked. And I was shocked when he told me that. And then I sat down and used the spiritual principle writing about this. And he was right. I was very angry with God. And I was trying to fool everybody, including myself, and acting like it wasn't there. So I wrote one of those God letters I'm telling you about. And I let that flow. See, in order to solve a problem, it first helps to know what the problem is. Now, once you know what the problem is, I have to tell you the answer is not in the problem. The problem's in the problem. The answer's in the answer, but you have to know what the problem is so you can go from the problem to the answer. And in doing that writing, using that spiritual principle, I was able to empty out enough that God could fill that empty space with God's love and heal that anger that I'd been carrying around that I felt so alone with. I couldn't tell anybody about. After all, I was their priest, and if they know I have problems, they might think God doesn't work. And what they would realize, if I let them know I had these problems, was that I need God just as much as they do. You hear that in 12-step recovery programs where you see people with oodles of years of sobriety, and they worry that if they talk about the problems that they have, that they go through stuff, that it will discourage new people. They'll think it doesn't work. And what I tell people who I've known in those programs, I said, no. What you'll do is you'll make it viable for new people because they can see you need this program just as much as they do. It's a beautiful thing. Thank goodness we have stuff to still walk through. If you want to know what life is about, go into an emergency room anywhere. Wait till this epidemic is gone, but just picture it in your mind for a moment. And I want you to picture an EKG. And what does an EKG do? What do they look at? They see it go up, they see it go down. They see it go up, they see it go down. That's life. And what happens if the line just goes straight? You're dead. Life is like that EKG machine. It goes up, it goes down. It goes up, it goes down. It goes up, it goes down. It's a rhythm. And when that rhythm stops, we're dead. So we need the rhythm. Now, we don't have to have the highs be so high and the lows be so low. That's why we do these exercises, these spiritual principles. But we need to have that ebb and flow. That's why the ocean doesn't stay still. It needs to ebb and flow. Our life is that ebb and flow. You're not being punished. I'm not being punished. It's the ebb and flow of life. What we're to do in that is die to self and resurrect in God. Now that may sound like a bunch of mumbo jumbo to some people, but let me explain it for just a moment. Our biggest obstacle is us, taking ourselves too darn serious. With I like, I don't like, ay, 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 ay. And when I'm doing that ay, 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 I can't hear God anywhere. Okay? So I have to get out of the way. And so when I die to self, I then wake up in God consciousness. What I'm really dying to is the ego. And we use the ego as an acronym for edging God out. when I think I have all the good ideas. And when I give that up, and the way I do it is through some of these writing exercises, through prayer and meditation. I spend every morning, an hour every morning in prayer and meditation, mainly meditation. I spend maybe less than 5 minutes talking, and the rest of the time, I have nothing to say. I want to hear. And I sit in peace. And a lot of times I say the Jesus prayer, which goes like this: Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me, a sinner. Or you can just shorten it to Lord Jesus, have mercy on me. Either way. There's another way to do it, which is to recite Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. And then shorten it a little bit each time as you breathe into your meditation. Be still and know. Be still. Be. And that's how, it's a good way to start a meditation. So get into the prayer and meditation. And in that meditation, ask, what do I need to write about? What do I need to get clear about? What do I need to let go of? And the things we need to let go of sometimes could be petty, sometimes they could be huge. Sometimes it's a huge hurt that we've carried for years that we really feel like we got the short end of the stick. And when we let God into that, we're able to be kinder to other people because we're kinder to ourselves, because we suddenly realize that God has loved us. I want to share with you one of my favorite poems. I've shared it many times on this show, but I love it, and so it's worth repeating. It goes right into what we're talking about. And the poem is called Broken Dreams. And I included this book in this poem in my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me. And the poem goes like this: As children bring their broken toys with tears for us to mend, I brought my broken dreams to God because I thought he was my friend. But instead of leaving him in peace so he could work alone, I hung around and tried to help with ways that were my own. At last I snatched him back and cried, "How could you be so slow?" "My child," he said, "what could I do? You never did let go." So part of the spiritual principles we're talking about is letting go and letting God. Letting God do what? Letting God guide us. Letting God love through us. Letting God see through us. Mother Teresa used to say that we're the only hands God has. Let us be those loving hands. Loving hands are for embracing. Loving hands are for helping someone out of a bad situation. Loving hands are for giving praise. So, as we're going into our last couple of minutes here, I want you to know that we can get through this together if we come together. We can also not get through this together if we don't come together. We have a choice. I wrote on Facebook this last week that this pandemic gives us a wonderful opportunity to make a choice of who we are going to be. Are we going to let this bring us to the most compassionate, loving, helpful, kind people we can be, true servants of God? Or are we going to let it bring out the worst in us? We have those choices. You have that choice. I have that choice. I hope we're going to make the choice to be kinder, more compassionate, more loving, more aware of the God that is in me is the God in you, and the God in you is the God in me. That expression they use in the East, namaste, simply put means the divinity in me recognizes and salutes the divinity in you. And so I hope you hear the great namaste. I wish you great peace. Most of all, I wish you love. And I wish you good health. But if you don't have the health, I wish you to be surrounded with caring, skillful people to help you so that you don't just survive, you live. We can do that. God doesn't have stepchildren. We're all God's children. And may you know your oneness with God tonight. You've been listening to Viewpoint with Father John. Again, I thank you for bringing me into your home one more time, another hour this week. And if no one's told you this week that they love you, let me be the first. And a quick shout out to my beloved Gabby, who's the most incredible wife anyone could have. My thanks to Frank, who's the best sound engineer in the world. And if Nick Lane, you're still listening, we miss you too. I hope whoever's show you're working appreciates the great sound engineer you are. You're still a part of our family as well. And to Mark Westwood, who's the station manager, for his generosity of letting us be here every week. Most of all, I thank my God for you, because without you, there wouldn't be me. We'll be back next week. God bless.
KCAA Loma Linda. Listen on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM.
This episode of the House of Mystery is brought to you by Legacy Food Storage. The best way to protect your family is by being prepared. LegacyFoodStorage.com.
New U.S. sanctions on Iran took effect today, 6 months after President Trump pulled the U.S. out of the international nuclear deal.
The sanctions target Iran's shipping, financial, and energy sectors, all key to the country's already struggling economy.
The bombs, which the FBI referred to as improvised explosive devices, were sent to the FBI's bomb laboratory in Quantico, Virginia.
We're in Mexico again tonight as thousands of migrants try to find a faster way to the U.S. border. The White House says it's now getting help from the Mexican government.
Breaking news out of Pittsburgh. The man accused in the shooting at the synagogue in Pittsburgh is pleading not guilty, and he also wants a jury trial. You can see he's facing 44 counts. So
in the final seconds before the Boeing 737 MAX crashed into the water, it was traveling at more than 500 kilometers an hour. All 189 people on board were killed.
You've now entered the House of Mystery.
Crime, conspiracy, history, and science.
With your hosts, Al Warren, Mike Brown,
Julie Sav, Michael Butterfield,
Dr. Joseph Usinski, and Michael Hawley.
Heard on KCAA 106.5 FM Los Angeles,
102.3 FM Riverside,
and 105.0 AM Palm Springs.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Okay, I think